All right, everybody. Hey, welcome to the Live Healthy MetroEast podcast. I am your host, Josh Nimmo, and I have a special guest on with me today. And she is not one of my coaches, but she is my sister. So, Mariah, welcome, and thanks for jumping on the podcast with me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, everybody might be like, hey, why do you have your sister on the podcast? You just like to call in a favor because you couldn't get any other guests. Like, what was it? But actually, the reason I have her on the podcast today is Mariah is also a personal trainer, strength and conditioning coach up in the Chicago area, and I have gotten to see her career evolve and go through a lot of different go in and out of a lot of different places over the years. I probably, I wish I could say that I taught her everything I know or she knows, but really, it was probably our dad, and he probably had a bigger influence on us than anybody else. Mariah, welcome, and maybe just give us a little background. Obviously, you had a really cool brother growing up, but other than that, tell us a little bit about kind of where you're at right now, or how you got to where you how you started exercising. Maybe a little bit of your athletic background, and then maybe how you got to where you're at now.
Okay. Yeah, obviously you and I share a very similar background to where it all started. Dad owned a gym when I was very young, so it started at a very young age with him owning the gym, always being around him in the gym. So exercise and fitness has kind of always been a part of my life. After he sold the gym, he became a fitness director at Eastside Center. And so I was always going to the gym with him there. With that, I kind of started sports at a very young age as well. So started playing basketball and softball at 4 or 5 years old. And then once I was kind of old enough to strength train, I started training with dad. I remember elementary school through high school, he would pick me up from school. We'd go straight to the gym. I'd get a workout in with him. And then either I was out on the court working on basketball, playing with whoever was out there, or just hanging out with him while he was training athletes. So yeah, it's been a part of my life from a very young age. Even mom would come to the gym and then she would coach her aerobics class. We'd go home, do the same thing over again. So yeah, it started at a very young age. When I got into high school, I kind of transitioned into just basketball. I stopped playing softball, started playing basketball year round. And then being an athlete and obviously dad's profession and being around it all the time, it significantly influenced the way I looked at training outside of just basketball and on the court. It was a way to get an extra edge on the competition, a way of injury prevention. I can say, like, throughout my entire career, I think the only thing I had was sprained ankle. So,
Right.
and I think that highly had to do with training at such a young age and like learning movement patterns, how to land, how to explode. So yeah, after high school, I ended up getting a full ride scholarship to play basketball at the University of Southern Indiana. I started studying exercise science and had a strength conditioning minor. I had some great professors there that really kind of further and deepened my passion for strength and conditioning. So as I got to my senior year, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I didn't really have the aspiration to go private sector right away. So I started doing some research on like what coaching at the college level looked like. And a lot of those professionals were going to get a graduate assistantship and working with their strength conditioning program while they were getting their masters. So I started applying to every college I could, started reaching out to different strength coaches at the college level and kind of pursued that avenue. So I accepted a position at Illinois State as their graduate assistant, started working with athletes. Illinois State was a very eye-opening experience for me. I had transitioned from being a student athlete into a coach within like 3 months. So
Mhm.
I think I finished my season in April. I started coaching in July that summer at Illinois State.
Wow.
So for me to transition out of sport, any athlete knows, like I was 5 years old up until I was 22 playing basketball. Like that's all I knew. So I was kind of struggling with that at the time. And then college athletics is no joke. I was at the weight room from 5:30 in the morning till 5:30 at night. Then I was going to class because I was in grad school, rinse and repeat. And so that was tough for me. And that was like I really found like this is going to be a grind. Like this profession is a grind. But I also, it was a spot where I found passion in working with college athletes. Like that filled my cup. I loved working with them. I had some great coaches as well as a player. So for me to be able to kind of feed that back to the athletes, that was a blessing for me and really, really fed my cup. So after that, I pursued the strength conditioning field at the college level. I went out to Bismarck, North Dakota. I was their first assistant. It was a D2 school, kind of smaller school. I got to work with Mike Silbernagel, who was great. He honestly showed me a lot about how to run a room, how to hold a standard, even like program design, and then creating relationships with athletes. Like being out there was a great experience. It was also very difficult to be that far from home. I think I was like 12 hours from home.
Mm-hmm.
In Bismarck, there's not a whole lot going on. It's not the place where young professionals are going and you're going to connect. So it got lonely at times and it was tougher than I thought it would be to go out there. But at the time, at the college level, it's kind of you go wherever the job takes you.
Right.
And so that's where it took me. But I grew a lot professionally. I grew a lot personally, just being on my own, like just self discovery there, and even spiritually, kind of leaning on my faith a lot there, and being separated from everything. I was able to kind of hear from the Lord and really grow spiritually throughout there. So that's an experience I was grateful for, but also a very difficult experience. When I got to the end of that year, I kind of had to reflect on what I wanted to do. So I always had it in the back of my mind that I wanted to get back to basketball as well. So yeah, my career kind of goes in all different directions. And so being at the college level of strength and conditioning for 3 years, I was getting the itch to get back into basketball. And I knew that was going to be pretty difficult to get back into with my background being strictly strength conditioning at this point. So I called my former coach, Coach Stein at USI, who I had played for 4 years, and kind of had different conversations with him just about transitioning into that aspect of things. He was pretty transparent with me that like it's a D2 school. They had two coaches already. He didn't really have a position open for me, but I could come in as a volunteer assistant. And so he was also very transparent in like you're an adult now, and financially it's not probably going to be the best move for you. But I was able to go to Southern Indiana, be a volunteer assistant with their women's basketball program, also run their strength and conditioning program, which I was able to get an income from that. I worked with two other teams on site because at that time Southern Indiana didn't have a strength conditioning uh, like program. Like they were contracting out strength coaches from local gyms. So to be able to be in house, I think was good for the program.
Mm-hmm.
And then to also make ends meet, I was teaching a class, and then I would personal train at the local gym and kind of work the front desk, and I just made it work. Um, so yeah, I did that for 2 years, and then I ended up going to a JUCO. It was right after COVID, so not only like coaching was a difficult time during that time, life was difficult. I ended that year and kind of had another time of reflection on like what do I want to do. And for me, I had moved 4 times in like 6 years, and I just didn't see that being the lifestyle long term. I was also really scared to leave the college strength conditioning setting because all the coaches are like, if you leave the college setting, you'll never get back into it. And I didn't want to have regret of leaving and not being able to get back if that's really what I wanted to do. So I started looking at different avenues. There were really like two different companies or organizations that I wanted to work with that I felt like were decently respected in the collegiate strength conditioning setting, and that was D1 training and then Exos. They're performance based, but they are also private sector. So after I left the coaching, I transitioned into D1, where I was their head speed and strength coach, which was it was really good transition for me because D1's gyms are set up just like a collegiate strength and conditioning setting. So like I was still working with athletes. I was able to work with like the general pop, but I was coaching them exactly how I did my college athletes. So that was a lot of fun for me. And then I did spend a year there. I ended up moving to the city. I was doing the commute back and forth, and it kind of got to be a lot. So it was honestly the first time I had moved for myself. I've always loved the Chicago area. So moving to the city was like the first time I had moved for me and not for a job. So it just felt right, felt good. And then when I got to the city, I ended up coaching at one of their facilities or one of like a local gym for a little bit, and then I ended up getting the job at Exos. So kind of all different avenues on my career path, but that's kind of what got me to where I'm at now.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about what you're doing currently in strength conditioning and in fitness. But I also want to, first of all, thanks for taking us on that journey.
It's a long
But
journey. Sorry.
but let's reflect here. How old are you?
What? How old am I?
Yeah, I know how old you are.
32.
Yeah, like so we just that's a whole lot of twists and turns and bends and in a very short amount of time, right? In about a decade, right? And so I think that's important though for people to realize is that obviously mentioning like, hey, I didn't really want to go into the private sector just yet. But on two levels here, on in the college strength and conditioning sector, but then also in the college sport coach section there. like either one, there's a ton of volatility in both of those industries and a ton of inconsistency. Yeah, you might get into a role that you come on as a head strength and conditioning coach and you're able to maintain that for a number of years, but more than likely you're going to bounce from job to job because new institutions come in, or new coaching staffs come in, and they want to bring their guys in or gals, and then they bring the next people out, and or a new head comes in, and so then they bring in a new assistant, right? And that holds true to strength conditioning as well as college sports. But I'm sure that, and you mentioned this, but like I'm sure that the experience that you got was second to none. And that's one thing I always try to do is when I talk to, I think I talk to a lot of college exercise science majors or strength conditioning majors that were very much that are very much in a similar boat that you were at that time, where it's like, I have this degree, I have a base level of knowledge, but I don't know really what I'm going to go do with this, right? And I think it's important that, it's very different going from the college strength and conditioning sector to then a private sector like I'm in, right? One of the things I value is taking my interns that we might get from the college setting and being able to expose them to a public setting. And we just wrapped up actually with an intern of ours that was in her senior year. You know, her only exposure had actually been the performance side of things in strength conditioning at the college level. And so to get to see what it looks like to work with general population, to work with, some of these people might be former, college athletes, but some of them might have never stepped foot in a sport in their life, right? And so the difference is there, and being able to understand those and appreciate those. I think that it's good that you had the opportunity to explore a couple of different areas to really hone in on where you wanted to be, and what you do now. So I know you started working. How long have you been with Exos now?
A little over 2 years.
Yeah,
2 years in July or
yeah,
January. Sorry.
and so Exos is internationally known for what they do in the fitness industry. But tell us a little bit about what you currently do with Exos, and then I know you may maybe do some other things too. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing currently, maybe who you work with now, and even maybe how some of your experience in the college strength conditioning setting is affecting you now.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, currently I am a performance manager with Exos at one of our corporate sites. Like you said, Exos started as Athletes Performance, which was
Which
way back
I
in the day.
applied for an internship with
Yeah.
when I was graduating college. I applied for an
Yeah,
internship with them. I didn't get it,
that's
but that's
okay.
okay. I was like, yeah, I'll go to Arizona, and they had this like sweet facility.
Exactly.
Yeah, so yeah, I know Exos as Athlete Performance from years and years ago.
Yeah. So, like, obviously, like when I was in the strength conditioning side of things, that was mostly what I knew about them, that they were like an athletic performance company. Obviously, their headquarters in Arizona, they have an amazing facility. They work with NFL draft prospects. I mean, we still do to this day, but that's originally how I had heard about them as well. So, in I think 2014, they rebranded to Exos, Athletes Performance rebranded to Exos, and they expanded out into the corporate setting, also military, and now it's like one of the biggest coaching companies out there. So, yeah, my role right now, I am with a corporate site. So I work with a financial firm downtown Chicago. So they have a gym inside of their office, and I manage that fitness center. I train their employees. We run small group sessions from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. There's another coach that works with me. He coaches the afternoons. But yeah, we tailor all of our programs towards that corporate setting. And I mean, for the firm that we work at, it's a lot of type A individuals. They have high demanding jobs. They're expected to perform at a high level during their job. And I think they transfer that into the weight room as well. So we have a lot of former athletes. They love to get after it. They love to move some weight. So it's been, I feel like when people think of like investment firm, they think of like people that don't want to move any weight. They're nerdy. They're like accountants, but like we have high level people that love to get after it. And that's kind of their time during the day to like let out some steam. So it's been really good. But as far as like the strength conditioning field transitioning into more of the corporate setting, I feel like there are a lot of skills that were transferable because when I was working in the collegiate strength and conditioning like setting, I was working with teams. I was reporting to their sport coach. I was learning what the goals were for that sport and like how they run their program. And then I also had to mesh it with my head strength coach, the culture that we had in the weight room. So it's similar to that with now my team is basically the financial firm and their employees. I have a liaison that I report to on that side of things, but I also have Exos who I report to on the strength conditioning side of things. So it's really finding a way to kind of mesh those two worlds and mesh those cultures, and still hold the standard of the fitness center, being able to create an experience that is beneficial for those employees. We have a lot of people that sit all day, they've tight hips or back. So we tailor our workouts to them in that aspect of things. But yeah, I think a lot of it transferred from working with the team. I'm working with the team generally, but it's just a different atmosphere.
Yeah. Well, it's so cool that, obviously on the corporate level that this company feels it's important to obviously implement some level of a program or access to exercise for their staff. You talked a little bit about like your liaison and whether you're reporting back to Exos or reporting back to the financial firm. But what type of are there metrics that they're really evaluating on seeing, whether that what kind of metrics are they tracking on the levels with their employees, that you can show like, hey, this is how valuable this is for your staff.
Exactly. So I will report back to our liaison with metrics monthly. And really, we check check ins, we check how many different individuals checked in, how many times they came in. And then we usually will try to run a program or a challenge on the month. So, like, January, our challenge was New Year bingo. And like,
Nice.
our clients loved it because there was something on the wall, and like they started like strategizing on how they were going to get each bingo card checked off. Like, some are traveling, they're like, okay, I can do this while I'm out, do this when I get back. And so like they really like took it seriously, and we had like more check-ins that month as well because they were trying to reach their goals. So we try to run something different each month in order to drive engagement. It is a little bit tougher in the corporate setting because there's times that people are traveling, there's times like they sign up for a session with us and then a call came up or a call ran over, and so they missed that session. So there are some challenges that come with it, but we do all we can to try to make it a little bit competitive in there. Again, like, they high demand in their work, and they're also very competitive in the fitness center, so we try to have some fun with that as well.
Yeah, I think that you're spot on when you talk about like, oh yeah, it's a financial institution, but my wife, but your sister-in-law, she works for a life insurance and investment company, and with that, I get to hear about different speakers that might come in, different reps that might talk at these events, and almost every time I am listening or she's telling me about successful reps within her organization, there's a couple of things that stand out to me. More than likely, most of them exercise. The other piece to it is they are extremely disciplined and they're highly competitive, right?
Yes.
And they have this like grit and grind about them that it's like no excuses, play like a champion, right? Like they're whether that's making dials, right? Like I'm cold calling X amount of people. Like one guy she told me about was like, this guy works out from, he gets up at like, it was like these weird times too. It was like 4:43 in the morning. And then like, and I'm making this up right now because I can't remember the exacts, right? But then like he works out from 4:57 to 5:36 because this amount of time allows him this, like, so like, oh, by the way, he's going to be really efficient in that time because of the amount, like, so they are calculated. And when you talk about competitiveness, like most of the time when we're in the financial district or we're in sales or whatever else, like there is a level of competition. Maybe there's a certain amount of commission that's earned or whatever else. Like, and so they're used to being competitive, number one. Number two, they're used to being disciplined. And if they've had any sort of development on a higher level, they also know that increased physical ability, increased physical fitness is also going to lead them down a path of more success in their professional life too. And so I think you're spot on. One question I would ask, because I know this, I experience this, like I have just slowly over the years, I have acquired a lot of entrepreneurs or high level business executives that the stress of you mentioned this, like, a lot of them, use it as a little bit of a release, from their day to day. Stress is a significant issue for a lot of my one-to-one clients. And one of the things that I notice is it's the exercise side of things, although it can be different for each person. And I don't know if you experience this, but like I find that like they really value having someone else step in and just tell them everything to do. Because more than likely they are spending most of the time telling everybody else what to do and having to make decisions and having to check this box and doing all right. And so then they come in to work out with me, and it's just like, this is their time to let someone else lead the way and let someone else just kind of handle things for them. And it's almost funny sometimes. Like sometimes I've got guys that, they might be, maybe they're really like just detached for the day. And they're just like, we've done the same exercise 100 times. Right. And they're like, so show me that again. Right. And like, it's the same warm up stretch we've done for months. Right. But again, they truly like, they've compartmentalized all their brain dump that happen throughout the day. They come into the room and they're just like, I literally need you to do everything for me. Outside of you lifting the weights for me, please take care of the next hour of my day. Right. Have you had that experience?
Oh my gosh, 100%. I was thinking the exact same thing. So like once they enter the room, it's like everything that they do outside, like numbers, obviously working with very knowledgeable people. They come in and it's like we're 2 sets in, they're like, what's the rep scheme again? I'm like, we just did this 2 other times. They're like, I promise I'm not like this at my job. I'm like, I understand that. But it's just a place where they can kind of come in and just exactly like you said, like just not think about it. Like I'm there to guide them through the whole workout, help them with a rep scheme. They're asked how many we're doing, like 10 times. It's just like, but it's a place for them to kind of like let out some steam, move some weight. And then once they're done, they kind of feel, most of the time, if they're stressed out when they leave, they feel like a lot better. And even just if it's a light workout, we might do like a recovery session where we maybe just foam roll and stretch. But because they were moving, they were able to kind of put their brain at rest for an hour or so. They leave the day kind of feeling recharged, and be able to go back to their desk and perform how
You
they.
mentioned the light day, right? And so I want to hit on that a little bit because do you have that where it's like maybe you've got the plan in place for the day and somebody comes in and they're just not there mentally or emotionally, right? And you have to, and do you just say, hey, we can wipe the slate clean and we can just do something different, right? Do you do that? Do you feel like that happens?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we program out in 4 blocks. We have 4 days a week because our employees are 4 days in the office, 1 day at home. So yeah, we have 4 days for 4 week blocks. But yes, we have, if they come in and they're like, I'm just not feeling it today, I'll always tell them come in regardless. If you're sore, if you're tired, come in and we will change it up. We can do a foam roll routine, we can stretch, we can even just do some body weight movements where we just move our body and we make sure that we get something in. I feel like getting something in is better than nothing. We also have a lot of people that travel. So when they come in, they might be sore because they were out of town sleeping in another bed for the last week. So now we need to change it up that way. We also have some new parents that aren't getting a lot of sleep at night and they come in and they're like, it was a bad night. And I'm like, that's okay. Let's just move our body. So we will definitely make modifications based on anything that we need or anything our client needs. But yeah, we try to accommodate any way we can. As long as they get in the room, we can help them.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the difference between someone navigating their fitness journey by themselves or someone working with a coach like yourself. And so, obviously you're in a setting where this company has hired you guys out to be able to take care of this stuff. But at the same time, this is one of the things that I think is so valuable when working with a coach because there's a difference between going to the gym and let's just use the example of the person that's tired. Like I didn't get any sleep last night because my kid didn't sleep, right? Well, more than likely, if they're left to their own demise, me personally, if I was left to my own outside of, doing this for the last 20 some years and knowing that like I feel better after I move,
Mm-hmm.
more than likely the person that is highly stressed, the person that's super tired, the person that's like, man, I'm emotionally exhausted. More than likely, they're just going to say, I'm just not going to go to the gym today, right? But when they have someone like yourself in their corner, being able to say like, hey, we did like it's over on my wall over here, but it's like show up, work hard, and the results follow, right? And I started saying that a lot, and we break it down to where it's like show up. And that means show up when you're tired, show up when you're happy, show up when you're sad, show up when you're exhausted, like whatever else, just show up, right? And then I just want you to work as hard as you can that day, right? And maybe that looks entirely different from the day before, and it'll look entirely different from the next week, right? But like we're just going to work as hard as we can today, and that might be foam rolling, that might be going through some stretch routine, that might be just doing 30 minutes of cardio and going on a walk, right? But having a coach to help direct that and them having trust in you that you're going to provide them exactly what they need that day. Like you said, more like I've just never had a situation where I've had a client come in like that and walk out feeling worse.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
So
well said.
I think that's huge to be able to be able to provide that service to to those folks, and then to be able to trust that, like, hey, I just need you to walk through the door. I'll take care of everything else. I just need you to walk through the door. What's obviously you're doing the Exos thing, getting to help in the corporate side of things, but you've had a lot of, your journey's gone a lot of different directions. Like, what are you really passionate about right now, or what's really, like, kind of fueling the fire for you in health and fitness right now?
Yeah. I feel like my position right now has been probably one of my favorite jobs that I've ever had. I feel like Exos puts such an emphasis on work life balance, which I feel like is very difficult to find in the fitness industry. When I was looking to transition out of like the athletic side of things, I wanted to find an organization that I could go to and kind of build within that organization. And Exos has been that for me. I started as a performance coach, was able to move up as a performance manager within 4 months. Obviously, I didn't know that was going to happen so quickly. My boss ended up leaving, like right when I came in. And so I had that opportunity that was right there. So for me, I'm passionate about what I do now. I think within that, I'm also really diving into kind of more rehab things. I would never overstep my boundary as in the physical therapy, but kind of been reading Rebuilding Milo, and he talks about you want to go to a mechanic to fill up your tires. Like that's something you could go do yourself. Whereas like even or are we going to see doctors on just minor aches and pains? Obviously, there's going to be a time where you do need to go see a doctor or a physical therapist. But if there are little things that we can kind of do in house, I would love to be able to do that. So obviously, you have like athletic training background, and I probably helps a ton for me. I don't have that, so kind of diving more into that right now. There's a lot of aches and pains for people who sit all day, so trying to navigate that. A lot of knee pain when they're running a lot. So diving more into rehab, kind of recovery spaces. The other thing I would say I'm diving into, Exos has put out a lot of research on training around the menstrual cycle, and I think that's something that has been left behind. As a female athlete growing up, it was always something that's like suck it up and push through. Whereas now the research is out there of like the physiological effects that's having on your body and how we optimize our training around that. So diving more into those two things currently, yeah, continuing to learn on those things and being able to provide that knowledge and resources for clients is where I'm at.
Yeah, I feel like we could have two separate podcasts on just those topics right there, but I want to talk about those a little bit because I think those are extremely important. So number one, obviously you mentioned, like, I have an athletic training degree. My degree, and to clarify, some people believe like athletic training in the athletic training industry or a career has become much more highlighted and understood that athletic training is not training athletes. Athletic training is which was previously called sports medicine, and still could, you kind of, flow back and forth between there. But my degree is in evaluation, treatment, and evaluation, diagnosis, and treatment of injuries in physically active individuals. More than likely, at the college setting is really where it came out. But we worked with high school athletes, we worked with junior high athletes, and then obviously professional at the professional level. So my degree was really more in rehabilitation of athletic injuries and being able to evaluate those things. I kept that degree. I kept my licensure and certification probably into the early 2010s. And then I got to a point where I had opened our gym in 2012. I was still doing a little bit of, PRN help at, sporting events and things like that. But I got to a point where I was just like, man, I don't want to work, 15 or 20 hours over the weekend at a soccer tournament after working 50 hours in my gym. Right. And so I got to the point where I maintained my credentials for a little while. Continuing education credits started to creep up. I was never good at maintaining my continuing ed, by the way. And so I was always like racing to get those things done. And I just got to the point where like I just didn't feel it was useful to me anymore to maintain my certification, but I still maintain all that knowledge. But that being said, the way I've always explained it is that I don't care if you were an athlete. I don't care if you were a grandmother. I don't care if you were the financial advisor that never played a lick of sports in your life. Everyone comes to us with issues with their body, right? Everybody moves differently. Everybody has different tightnesses and weaknesses. You talked a little bit about being desk workers and having tight hips and tight backs and poor posture and how will you treat that? Like, there is a level of rehabilitation that should come into every single training program. I don't care who you are or what you are. Like, so having that knowledge of rehabilitation or at least a surface level understanding of rehabilitation and also knowing where to stay in your lane, I think it is massively helpful to the client. And, obviously I interviewed actually our athletic trainer that is on site here at our gym. I interviewed him last week on the podcast, and we talk a little bit about that. Like, I'm grateful that I have someone in my corner that, like, I can stay in my lane, but then I can also shift lanes. But it's sometimes better for me to just move you to the other person that can care for you. But still, so often a client might have a minor sprain, a minor strain, maybe just overly sore muscles, from, like you mentioned, certain lifestyle situations that have led them to have poor recovery, like not sleeping with babies or, whatever else, right? That, we can be that bridge to say, hey, let's do two or three things here and see if we can make this better. And if we can't, let's move you forward with the next person. But let's just see if we can spend the next few days trying to get this better. And having that knowledge base as a strength and conditioning coach, as a personal trainer, like that it's invaluable, because you're going to come across it. And when I was coming up, my goal in my career was I got exposed to working with athletic trainers and physical therapists through an injury I sustained in high school football. It was my first exposure to work with people that like had this bridge between performance and rehab. And I was like, oh man, I'm going to go get my athletic training degree, and then I'm going to go into physical therapy school, and then I'm going to open my gym, and I'm going to work with elite level athletes. This is why I wanted to go and intern with athletes performance, because I was like, that's who I want to work with, right?
Yeah.
Didn't go get my physical therapy degree because I, was working for a company that I was doing some physical therapy help with, serving as an athletic training assistant, doing personal training, doing fitness, doing athlete development, all this other stuff. And he was like, hey, listen, do you want to spend $30,000 next year, or do you want to make $30,000 next year? And as a 22-year-old kid, I was like, I'll make 30K. That's fine. Like, that sounds better, actually. But what I had found actually is that I realized that going into physical therapy wasn't going to be the route that would serve who I was trying to serve. But what I found too is like that work, I worked in a physical therapy clinic for 6 years that was physical therapy and fitness. And that education I received in that clinic. And then also what we did was we would activate clients or patients from a rehab setting into a fitness setting. And so that connection and that development for me was so valuable to me as I moved forward, because working with the people that we work with 150 some people in here. And the reality is everybody has an issue. Everybody has a movement issue, something like that. And so that I can be that kind of first line of defense to help them out with that. But the other cool thing for us is we're fortunate enough to have a partnership with an athletic training company that they do athletic therapy services right within our facility, to be able to bridge the gap for us that keeps the client moving through exercise while also getting care for their injuries. So, that's been huge for us. Do you guys have anything like that within your partnerships with Exos or with the financial firm at all?
Not with our site. There are other sites that will have like massage therapy on site. They have physical therapists, as far as like even nutrition help. For us, it's myself and our other coach. But yeah, Exos does have that other places, just not unfortunately on our site. We are able to kind of reference out. I've met a couple physical therapists that I trust that have worked on me. So those are some people that I will recommend out to our clients that need help. But other than that, yeah, we don't have anybody on site, unfortunately. So I think that's what has kind of ignited this in me as well. Like that education that you have from past is so valuable. Like you said, everybody has an injury. Everybody has something going on. So to be able to take care of that in-house is ideal.
Yeah, I always love when I sit down in a consultation with somebody. I'm like, all right, so do you have any bone or joint issues or any medical issues that we need to be aware of before we train with you? And they're like, no, I think I'm good. And then we'll get like 2 sessions, and they're like, oh yeah, you know what? I like tore my rotator cuff a couple of years ago, and so like every time I go overhead, this is like, hey, remember when we talked about your medical issues? That's what I was talking about. Just so you know. Right. So let's work on this now, right? So like you said though, like I mean, everybody has something. The other thing I want to touch on is, because I think this is extremely important, this is something that we actually have gotten a lot more involved in over the last couple of years, is women's health, right? And the specificity around, obviously, our menstrual cycles. I say our, it's not ours. Like, I'm not involved in this. But menstrual cycles and exercise, but then also prenatal and postpartum care, right? And so you mentioned like even, people that have kids, right? Well, if you're dealing with someone from the office that just came off of maternity leave, like, their progression through exercise is entirely different probably than the guy that just walked in, right? And so I think that's really a really interesting route to pursue, because there just isn't enough discussion around it. And I know like we've been very proactive around this. So we have one of our coaches has a certification through a company called BirthFit, that really focuses on prenatal and postpartum care for females, but then also just being educated and having more understanding around your menstrual cycles, how that affects the hormonal changes in the body, how that affects then performance, how that affects tendon and ligament strength. And you know, I mean, so many pieces of the puzzle that I think, as you mentioned, years ago has been just like, well, you just power through, like just deal with it, right? And then the conversation around like, you know, if a female comes off of a pregnancy and has a diastasis recti, or they have, you know, maybe they have pelvic floor issues and they urinate every time they jump, right? Like those are things that are not normal, but have been accepted as normal in our world. And I think it's awesome that you're diving into that, because that's only going to make your work with other females so much more impactful.
Right. Yeah. I think the other aspect of things is like there's so much information out there. Like from one spectrum that one doctor says don't do anything like while you're pregnant or once you're done. Whereas, or you can get on social media and it's the other thing. Oh, you can do whatever you want. So I think to be a source or resource to provide for our clients is something that makes something major. There's just so much information out there, and like I have clients that will bring me a different fact every other day, and I'm like, yes, I understand. There are many different paths to make our goal. So yeah, I think just having that knowledge is
Well, I think we already hit on this a little bit about the value of having a coach. But when I talk to someone about why it's important to have a coach, there's kind of like two key things that I give them. Is I give, as I say, like one is speed, and the other one is clarity, right? And I could also term that as focus, right? Because there is so much out there, and one of our core values is we talk about, you know, honesty, right? But really, it's honesty around like, we want to be a voice of truth in a world of noise. And what's so important is that because of all the noise out there, like I can go on, heck, now I can go on Chat GPT and be like, hey man, give me a strength program, right? And for a 40-year-old guy with a bad knee, right? But what I really struggle with is like when people bring me those things or people ask me a question, like the tried and true answer is it depends, right? Because I'm never like, and that's one thing. And cause I want to talk a little bit about the education side of this, or the collegiate side of this for upcoming, strength and conditioning coaches. Cause I think this is really important. And I want to get your thoughts on this, but, one of the things I talk to my students about as they're coming up is like, dude, I understand what the book says. Okay. I understand. I got it. Right. Like I got a bunch of the books and I can tell you that I've read a lot of them. What I'm going to tell you is you have to care for the person in front of you. And so to be that coach that can provide the voice of reason and the voice of focus there. And when I talk about speed, I talk about like, listen, in 20 some years, I've probably screwed it up enough that I actually know the fixes for that. So how about you avoid all the issues that I already have encountered, and let me just give you speed and efficiency for you to see your results, right? And so, you know, I think that's huge in what you talk about, because like you said, I when I was interviewing our BirthFit coach a while back, we talked about that. We were talking about like, you know, the OB that tells you don't lift more than 20 pounds, the OB that tells you you don't have to keep your heart rate under 140. Like, you know, and I'm just making these things up. But again, like it's just so all over the place, right? And then when somebody goes back to exercise, like, oh no, you can return back to exercise whenever you're ready. And it's like after 6 weeks you can go back. And I'm like, well, maybe. But after 8 weeks, but no, maybe not. Like this person hasn't figured out how to re-brace their core. They haven't done, you know. And so I think having coaches like yourself that want to dive into those conversations and dive into that information to better help our female clientele is huge. So I want to circle back to the education side of things, because obviously your journey took a lot of turns, and you did explore the collegiate setting. You've been in the private sector. One of the things I think I'm passionate about, and I don't know how you feel about this, and we get interns here and there, and like I said, we just got done with an intern from a local university. I'd love to work with more of those interns, but one of the things for me is I always want to, and even if I'm talking to like a high school kid, so sometimes I'll go and talk to junior highs or high schools at a health fair or at a career fair, and they want to know about what I do. Which what I do is like it's not probably a typical career. Like I'm not going and working in an office setting or whatever else, right? And so, and the path that you took and the path that I took have been different, right? But we have also done so much of the same things. So I always try to think about like the things I want to instill in the next generation of strength and conditioning coaches or that next generation of fitness professionals. What would you say, like if you could go back to, you know, 18, 19, 20-year old Mariah, right? Trying to figure out what she wants to do with strength and conditioning or what path you might take. And it doesn't even have to be you, it doesn't have to be personal, but like what would you tell to that, that exercise science student out there trying to figure out like what the next step is for them? How would you maybe give them insight?
Right. I mean, you talked about you can read every book that you want and have all the knowledge and have all the wisdom on the book side of things. But I think the biggest thing is getting on the floor, and like do the internships. If you're in exercise science, I would say explore different avenues with internships. Like go on the private sector side of things, get in the collegiate setting things, and get on the floor as much as possible. I feel like for myself, I was an athlete, so it was hard for me to get like an internship at the collegiate setting when I was first coming up because my only time I could get there is in the summer and I was training for basketball year round. So my internship was actually at a private sector facility, Sports Excel. And so that was really my only like internship before I entered graduate assistantship. So I was probably behind going into my graduate assistantship. Obviously, I'd spent all those years with dad, but just learning the X's and O's and actually coaching. I think first get on the floor and observe everything, soak everything in, see how coaches are coaching, what are they cueing, what are they looking at, how are they running the room, how are they holding a standard of that room, and then as those coaches kind of build trust in the young intern, maybe they end up coaching the warm up or they go through the first part of the workout or they flip back and forth. I think the other thing is like get out there and coach. Everybody's different, everybody moves different, people respond differently to different types of coaching. Some people you got to get up in it, but other people they don't respond to that. So I think actually getting out there and getting on the floor is huge before. I mean, it just exposes you to every different aspect of exercise science that you can. And that I think would allow somebody to pick the right avenue for what interests them and what drives their passion. So, yeah, I would say gain as much experience as you can, figure out, go to as many different places as you can, learn from as many different coaches as you can. And you will ultimately kind of build your own coaching style and your own coaching philosophy through learning from everybody else.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, that's spot on to what I talk to kids about as well is, you've got to go see different places. You've got to see had I never stepped foot into a private physical therapy clinic, I would have never realized that like, oh, this isn't where I want to be. This isn't exactly what I want to do. And so I made a detour, right? You know, the other thing about just getting on the floor, I think that's so important. The sooner potential clients or coaches could do that, the better, because I think, like you mentioned, it's kind of this like fake it till you make it mentality. And I know that like some people will be like, oh, that's not true. Don't just fake it, right? But like, I don't view it as fake it. I view it as like, if I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail at 100 miles an hour, right? And the reason I'm going to do that, and the reason I encourage that, is because like I'd rather care that you got on the floor, you made some decisions. I can always dial it back. I can always tweak you. I can always adjust this piece, right? But you got to sometimes screw up to figure out like, okay, what makes sense, and all while keeping people safe. And one of the things I tell people is like, I'm never going to put an intern or a new coach or a potential coach in a setting where I believe they can't be successful, right? Like my goal as a mentor and as a coach of coaches is to put you in successful situations, right? And doesn't mean you're going to be perfect at those situations, but the more you can get on the floor and the more you can get exposed to other coaches and watching what they do and engaging with people. One thing that I've seen as a roadblock with a lot of young coaches now or potential coaches now coming into the world we live in now is that we spend so much time behind screens that people don't know how to engage personally with someone. And I think that can be a big roadblock for someone when they go to engage with people, because one of the rules I always tell my staff is like, listen, I just need you to care for people. I need you to love on these people. I need you to be nice to them. I need you to build trust and rapport with them. And then from there, okay, now we can coach them, right? But it's hard for me to teach you to not be a jerk, right? Or to teach you to like, oh, you gotta talk more, right? The intern we had this last spring, I was like, hey, how'd you feel about this? Or how'd you feel like, I feel like I talk too much. I'm like, cool. Well, here's the deal. You do a little bit. But that being said, I'd rather you talk too much and know that we can like dial that back than me having to feel like, gosh, I got to pull words out of you, because your engagement and your personability with with that client makes them feel comforted, makes them enjoy their time with you. And so that opens up your opportunities to coach them better. Right. And so that's spot on with me. And I think having the book knowledge is important, but you get to apply that book knowledge and you get to test that book knowledge and you get to tweak that book knowledge when you go to work with a person. Yep. And if you never have that opportunity prior to actually like going into your profession, now you're trying to learn all that, on the fly. And that gets really hard. And as you mentioned a couple of times, like we had great exposure to that. We're talking about, we refer to him as dad, but really we should refer to him as the man, the myth, the legend, Al Nimmo. And if you ever, frequent the Central Illinois stomping grounds, you'll know of Al Nimmo. But we had great exposure to someone who did all of those things almost flawlessly, in the sense of like how great of a coach he was, but also how great of a communicator he was and how he made people feel. And so still doing it a little bit. He's retired, but like they're never really retired. Like I don't understand it. So, still doing a little bit of coaching, and I don't think he'll ever really stop. I don't know. Truly getting to watch that as kids. Like we didn't grow up like trying to find our way in health and fitness like on our own. We got exposure to that with our parents being at the gym, and Mariah's my half sister. So I have another, I grew up with another family as well. And they were all at the gym. Like everybody was at the gym in the afternoons after school and after work and everything else. And so fitness was never something that was not involved in our life. And the cool thing is we get to still see our parents doing all of that stuff. And so, that's been something that we've just been blessed with. But having the opportunity to actually watch a coach do those things and be able to kind of be a fly on the wall from the time really we were, very young, to get to watch him coach and then be able to take those things and, like you mentioned, develop your own philosophies, develop your own values and principles, I think is really helpful. I want to ask one other thing, and we're over on time. And so I don't know what your time stamp is here if you got to go, but
I'm good.
I want to ask one other thing, because you've mentioned it like 3 times in the podcast. And this is something that I think is really important, something I talk about. And I just get into this conversation all the time with whenever I interview my staff on here or whatever else. We talk about it's like the art of coaching. So like one of the things we talk about is obviously how we make people feel, making sure that we do check-ins with people to make sure we adapt and modify programs as how they're feeling that day and all of that stuff. But something that you've mentioned is holding the standard of the fitness center, or holding the standard of the room. Could you share a little bit about like, what does that mean to you? What is holding the standard for you when it comes to the fitness center or working with your clients?
Yeah, I guess I'll take it back. So when I was at the University of Mary, like I said, I was under Coach Silby, and he had developed that program from bottom up. So like any GA that came in, any assistant, that was his baby, and you were gonna run that thing like he did. So for me, that was where I really like honed in and understood what holding the standard is. So at that time, it was athletes coming in, and we had a system of program design, and we were going to go through that, but it was also like, how well are we moving today? Are we moving with intention? You're not just in here going through the motions. We have intention with every movement. The energy of the room is high, and different aspects like that. So obviously, athletic setting, the energy of the room is going to be much higher than it is in my corporate setting right now. But I think holding the standard is, in the corporate setting, it's having high level, and it's being there for each individual how they need me to be there. That could be, we get after it one day, and the next day you feel broken, and we've got to scale it back, like we talked about. We might scratch the whole workout and do some mobility and some stretching. But I think having a standard of the room is there's an order of operation that we're going to run the fitness center, and we're going to do that at a high level. And so that goes down to our programming for the month. Adam, my other coach, and myself, we switch off on programming, and it's not just like we plop something down. It's something that we think about, and normally it's something that we both have done previously, and we know that's going to be beneficial for our clients. So for us, it's like we want to create an experience. We want to create an amazing experience for our clients that are coming in. We want it to be enjoyable for them. We want them to get something out of it, and we want them to keep coming back. Obviously, that's a perk for our clients right now, but I think just creating an incredible experience that people enjoy and they see benefit and the results. It's kind of holding that standard.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing a little bit more on that because, I I don't know that everybody realizes that. And we talk about this in here a lot is and one of our core values is pursuing excellence, right? Listen, like we're not going to be perfect at everything that we do, but we want to make sure that everything that we do is in that pursuit of excellence. And so I believe if you go to a facility or you work with coaches that have that idea of holding the standard and have a concept of a standard, right? Like, that strength and conditioning coach, he had that standard and he instilled that in every GA that came in, right? And we're much of the same, right? Like we have a standard of what our expectation is, whether I'm on the floor or not. Like this is what I want us to deliver every single time. And if it's not our best, then like maybe we need to have somebody else on the floor to be able to be there. Now, one of the things that we talk about is like even just our facility setup, like the cleanliness of it, the organization of it. Like people get on me all the time, like, oh man, Josh moved things again. Like I did because I'm paying attention to the flow. I'm paying attention to how the floor plan needs to be to maximize the experience of the clients, right? We're right now in a season of coach evaluations. And so every single coach on our staff will be evaluated in their performance on the floor, whether that's in a one-on-one setting, whether that's in our group CrossFit setting, whether that's in our 55 and older program, whatever it may be, you're going to be evaluated on your performance. And then we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about how we could get better. We're going to celebrate how good you are, but we're also going to talk about how we can get better. On every 6 weeks, we have an in-person staff meeting that we talk about, like that we spend an entire section on coach development, right? So all of those pieces of the puzzle are us holding our standard as to be excellent coaches, to be excellent providers of health and fitness to our clients. And so I just love that that's something that you talk about because I think it's extremely important. I think if people pay attention, they notice a difference in coaches and facilities and businesses that hold that standard versus, and everybody's standard might be a little different, but like there is a difference between somebody that knows their standard and upholds it versus someone that's just like, yeah, just come in and work out, right? They're like, it's not a big deal. So I just wanted to ask about that because you just mentioned it a few different times, and I think that's really important. Well, hey, this has been great. Normally I try to keep it like 30 to 45 minutes. I knew that I probably wouldn't do that with you, just because I like spending time with you. So, but I really appreciate you coming on. I hope this isn't even the last time doing it. If somebody wanted to find out, like, cause who knows, we might have people in the Chicago area watching this or whatever else, or even like, you talked a little bit about Exos. And by the way, we weren't trying to like plug Exos as an employment opportunity, but like you didn't not sell it. Like you did a good job selling, right? So, but if someone, wanted to be able to find you or find out more about like, the things you're doing up in the Chicago area, like how could they connect with you?
I mean, I'm on Instagram, Mariah_Nimmo. You can find me there. LinkedIn, you can just search my name. But yeah, those are the two easiest ways to kind of connect.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward. I'm going to get to see you probably in a couple weeks up north, and so that'll be good. But until then, keep doing your thing. It's been a joy as a big brother to get to watch his little sister do her thing, and I just think you're doing amazing stuff up there. So look forward to seeing you continue to move and shake.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Thanks for coming on.